Okay, grade 12s, let's revise the cumulative frequency curve. Another name for it is the ogive curve, if you remember. Now here's an example. The results of 50 learners were recorded in the table as grouped data. Remember, grouped data involves class intervals. Now what you can see is in this class there were 4 kids that got a mark either 0 up to 20 but not including 20. Then 11 kids got between 20 and 40. They could have got a mark of 20 but they didn't get a mark of 40. But any mark in between 20 and 40, let's say below from 20 to 39, there's 11 kids that got that kind of mark. Then from 40 to 60 is 20, not including 60 but including 40. Then there were 10 kids that got marks from the 60 to the 80, okay, including 60, so they could have got 60 or 61% all the way up to 79, not including 80. Then from 80 to 100, hey, and there must have been a guy who got 100 because we're including 100, so there's 5 kids who got a mark between 80 and 100. Okay, now how do we draw a cumulative frequency curve? Well, the first thing that we do is we write the frequencies down. Now you start off, now watch this, it's actually so easy this, if you remember. You start off with the mark of 4. Okay, 4 kids got between 0 and 20. So you could say 4 learners got below 20. Okay, then you say 4 plus 11 is 15, which means that 15 kids, the 4 and the 11, 15 kids got below 40. But remember, 4 kids got below 20, and 11 kids got between 20 and 40. But 15 kids, if you add these two up, 15 kids got below 40. Now what's 15 plus 20? Gives you 35. 35 kids got below 60. Then if you add these up, you get 35 plus 10 is 45, and 45 kids got below 80. You see, and then if you say 45 plus 5 is 50, 50 kids got below 100. Would you agree? Obviously, okay. And in fact, some kids may have even got 100 there. One or two might have got that. Okay, then how do we draw the cumulative frequency graph? What you do is you create what I would call graph points. Okay, and they're pretty easy if you remember from grade 11 days. What you do is, I always get kids to do this. I say circle the end of the class interval there. Circle the end of the class interval and the cumulative frequency. And that'll give you a graph point of 20 and 4. Then you do the same. The end of the class interval with the cumulative frequency. Another graph point, 40, 15. Then it goes 60 to 35, so it's 60 and 35. 80 would be your x there, and your y would be 45. Your cumulative frequency is always represented on the y-axis, and the class intervals on the x-axis, specifically looking at the end point there. And then it goes 100 and 250, so it's 150. Very important to write those graph points down. Now when you represent the points on the graph, what we can do is we look at the point 20 and 4. So let's go into here. We'll just go over here. So if you look at this point there, x is 20, y is 4. So I'm going to make it pretty strong there. Let's put there, it's going to be a mark of 20 and 4. And then what we could do is we could go back to 0 there. And what normally happens there, if you go to your class interval, you can immediately see from 0 to, you can put a 0 there and start at 0 and then go and put a little dot there. Then okay, the next one is this point here, which would be the next graph point would be 40 and 15. So let's go there. It'll be 40 to 15. So it's 40 and 15. 15, you can't really see that there, but there's 15 on the y-axis and 40 below. Okay, then we've got another point which is 60, 35. So we go there. 60 to 35 is this guy here. So it's 60 to 35, and then what's the other graph point is 80 to 45, so it's 80 there, and 45. 45 is on the y-axis, and 80 is on the x, and then of course you've got 150 there. Okay, and that will be your last graph point. And then what we then did, if you remember, we join up these with a curve, sort of curves like that. And it's called our ogive curve. And then the advantage of the ogive curve is that you can get the quartiles. Okay, now how we do that is actually very simple. If you want the median, it's the halfway mark. Now remember there's 50 scores, so we're going to go up. The halfway mark is 25. So if you want the median, I'm just going to do this in a different color. You would go up to the halfway mark, which is 25, and you draw a line across to the graph, and down you'd go. And where it cuts, where you read off the x-axis, you'll see that you can't really see that there, but it's 50. Okay, and that will be your median. Okay, your median will be 50. Okay, which is great. Then if you take your lower quartile, that's a quarter of the way up. Now what's a quarter of 50? Well, a quarter of 50 is very simply going to be 12,5 or 12 and a half. Okay, so there we go. So a quarter of that is going to be 12 and a half. So you go up to 12 and a half, and on the y-axis, and you cut the graph, and you go down, you touch the graph, you go down, and you'll see that it hits about 35 there. Okay, around about 35, that's where your lower quartile is. That's the lower quartile. Your upper quartile would be 3/4 of the way up. Okay, and if you take 3/4 of the way up, that's about 37 and a half. So we go up here, if you remember, to about 37 and a half, which is there, and we go to the graph, and then we come all the way down. And remember, these are just approximate values. They don't have to be absolutely perfect. They will allow for a lot of values. That's around about 64. You can't really see it there, but it's about 64, and that gives you your third quartile. So remember, you get estimates of your median, your lower quartile, your upper quartile. So once you've got the graph points, you get your cumulative frequency, and then cumulative frequency 4 plus 11 is 15, 15 plus 20, 35, 35 plus 10, 45, 45 plus 5 is 50. And then your graph points is the 20 with the 4, the 40 with the 15. You plot those points, which I've done there, and remember on the x-axis is the marks, the cumulative frequencies on the y-axis. You can't really see the numbers too clearly, but once you've got that, you can then get your quartile. So the median is halfway up. If you have a look there, it goes up to 50 there, so it's halfway. So you go to 25, which is halfway up, and you go to the curve and down, and you read off on the x-axis the median. And likewise with the lower quartile, it's a quarter of the way up. At 12,5, you go then from 12,5 to the graph down and read off 35 as your lower quartile. Your upper quartile is 3/4 of the way up, which is at 37,5 there. You go to the graph and down you go, and you read it off on the x-axis, which is about 64. Okay, around about 64. Obviously, depending on how you've drawn your graph, you'll get slightly different readings, but it's really just estimates of the quartiles. And that's what we do when we actually work with the cumulative frequency curve. We get approximate values for the quartiles, given that there's a lot of data normally.